Hello and welcome to the Paper Prototypes podcast. My name is Rex, and here I have Ritz, developer of Stratospear. Ritz, why don't you tell me about what your thought process was when making the game?
Sure. Strato. Oh God, where do I start? So I actually originally wasn't even going to enter the 32-bit game jam. Um, because I'm like, okay, I still need to work on my other like full game projects. I can't enter another jam this year. But I brought it up with some friends, and they were like, "Oh, I'd love to do a game jam, actually." I'm like, oh, hmm. And then we started it together. However, due to them also having a real game to work on with a publisher and a contract and everything, they had to pull out pretty early. So I'm like, shit. Uh, I guess I'm in the mood now. I got started, and I guess I'll just actually do it by myself anyway. Um, as for the actual gameplay, I knew I had wanted in my last game jam. I had already made another 3D platformer, which I've made a lot of at this point. And I've been really jiving to make like a proper action game of some description. So I was like, yeah, screw it. I'll just do that. I'll see how that goes. I just had this idea in my head about throwing and like juggling a weapon and everything, and I just kind of played it by ear and went as I went. Uh, saw if the mechanic worked at all. Starting to come together. I will meet my phone, and yeah.
How many platformers do you have under your belt right now?
Uh, Technically speaking, one, uh, in terms of actual things that is a game that's put out. But in terms of like actual like different prototypes, got so, this one, five? Yeah, five. Um, I don't know if you want to count this one, then six, I guess. Uh, I've been a little bit obsessed with the idea that combat in platformers could be a lot better, which sounds like a thing nobody wants usually, right? Because usually like um combat in a platformer is just like you jump on the enemy, right? Um, but I think that's really boring, and I think there's more to explore there. The most I think the most like interesting take on that recently has been Psychonauts 2, uh, where every single like psychic ability upgrade you get, they try to make have some kind of combat utility, even if it's really ham-fisted like clairvoyance. um, but they always keep you moving around in Psychonauts 2. They have a nice little set of enemy designs and everything. I think it's a good step in the right direction. But to me, I do think the key is keeping the player moving so that fighting stuff and jumping on stuff doesn't feel too different, basically. Um, just the goal kind of changes. Uh, and when I think about it, the game that best incorporates movement and fighting to me is Super Smash Brothers. Um, so I kind of wanted to emulate that. And Stratosphere is a little bit of that itself. The inputs are, directional, kind of like Smash, and it's very knockback based. Everything sends enemies at like a unique angle to get juggles and everything. There's a few animations that are very Smash referenced. Yeah, that's it's between that and Devil May Cry, as I said on my on the page. Those are the inspirations.
That I picked up almost immediately. Which is funny because I've never played Devil May Cry, but I was like, I get the feeling this is what that game would play like.
A little bit. This is a little more. I don't want to say freeform. Devil May Cry is very freeform once you get going with it, especially. But it's I don't know. I guess you're a little bit less locked down in this game, if I had to put it. Uh, because again, it's like Smash, where when you do moves, other than at least the aerial ones, you can stay moving in a in DMC, whenever you shoot or do an attack in the air, it like kind of stops you and the enemy and just kind of keeps you both there. But for this one, enemies get hit and they get juggled, and you're also still moving, so you can like try to get back to the ground and keep the juggle going that way, rather than just kind of like staying in place in the air for a while. Um, you have to keep jumping back up and so on and so forth.
What inspired the art style? Because that was the thing that attracted me like almost immediately when I saw your posts on Twitter, was the very retro inspired visuals.
Yeah, well, the jam itself was a 32-bit game jam, so that's like fifth generation, that kind of retro, low poly look, PS1, Sega Saturn, and technically not 32-bit, but still in the era of the N64. Um, I actually would have really liked to make something in the N64 style, but there's shaders for getting stuff to look more PS1 that you can download for Unreal Engine, and those do not exist for N64. So there you go. I never actually had a fake fan incoming. I never actually had a PS1 growing up, or a Sega. That I had the Nintendo 64, but I still very much have an appreciation for this and just kind of limited art styles in general. Um, same with pixel art, low poly, etc. I think just working with a constraints like that is very interesting. It makes you have to uh, make very specific decisions and not just like do whatever you want, which can lead to some interesting stuff. Um,
Is there
I
anything about the visuals that, like, other than working about them, is there anything about the aesthetic that you like personally?
yeah. I like the overall palette. I think it's not color isn't my strongest point, nor environment art, but it was nice to make something that was more finished for once. Um, and what is it? I'm of course a big fan of my own character design. uh, I always try to put. I think a lot of indie character designs like don't really like either don't try particularly hard or don't quite get what makes like a really like memorable and iconic design or whatever kind of buzzwords you want to throw in.
And what about your design do you think is memorable and iconic?
I really care about. There's a few things. Having some kind of very distinct idea that's like just very clear to the viewer is one thing. Um, like VT, the character for this is some kind of like weird astronaut, but also with a spear. um, but also on top of that, even if you don't have that, just having very good color blocking and silhouette, which is not like new ideas, I think, but still a lot of games don't really hit that. They do also need to be again like I think they do need to be a little bit more distinct than a lot of people will go for. Um, it can work in spite of that sometimes. Like Hat Kid is probably a good example of a character that's not particularly distinct. Um, but she does have good color blocking. And shapes. I mean, she's kind of just a Wind Waker Link in that regard. Which is not just me being reductive. She did kind of start like literally exactly looking like a color swap of Wind Waker Link. Um, in the old prototype versions, and then a better version, which is a little bit more, I guess, unique, is something like Hollow Knight, where the devs themselves. Hollow Knight was made for a jam game. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with now that fact. It had nothing to do with the actual game that we have now, Hollow Knight, but the devs just liked the character design so much, they're like, we could just make an entire world based off this little dude, and they did. And I think that's a really good sign of a character design. When it inspires you to like make a whole entire unique context just for them, um, that's good shit. And yeah, Hollow Knight, he's broken up into like basically three distinct little blobs. He's very simple. anybody can draw them, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I could go on for probably a few hours just on character design itself. So I'll stop here for now. But yeah,
Well, there is
uh,
something about Sorry, I'm still recovering from COVID.
yeah,
There's
no
something
problem.
about good character design that I even sometimes I'll see something like in a TV show and I'll just take like a picture of a screenshot and I'm like, I want to make a game with that. I'm gonna save that for later. I don't really know why, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, I don't want to talk myself up too much. I put a lot of stock into this thing, and I do try, but I don't think I'm like the best or anything. I think I just care a lot more than uh most devs. Before I was a dev, I would definitely have classified myself as like a character designer. So yeah.
I've interviewed different devs, and a lot of them, like, they have their own like unique little interests about what they like about game design the most. Would you say
Mhm.
character design is actually? Yeah, that's a great question. Is character design what got you into game development, or was it something else?
Um, kind of. So I guess I'm just, if I was to describe myself, I'm a very character-oriented person when it comes to media works. I don't know. I like character design. I like focusing a lot on the character controller in games. That's where I put a lot of my dev resources into, I guess, and learning, making character feel good, control good, have interesting buttons to press, I guess. And when it comes to stories, I'm also very character oriented. I want characters I can get attached to, um, with like good emotional arcs and are charming and like interesting to have on screen and everything, more so than I care about like the lore or like how logical like certain progressions might be. That stuff matters to me still. But the character is the thing you really like hook onto, I guess. Um, the thing that actually got me into game dev is, well, I mean, to answer the other part of the question, is of course I just really like games. I've been playing them since forever, right? Um, but I guess it was just that it was literally that Unreal Engine 4. I had kept hearing over and over that they were like, "Oh man, it's great for artists. If you're an artist, you should try Unreal Engine 4. You'll get the pipeline stuff." I'm like, you know what? Maybe I will. I had tried other stuff when in the past when I was like still a teenager, like Game Maker Studio 2 and stuff, right? Not even 2, I think at the time. Um, but yeah, uh, I had already gotten a little bit of skills 3D modeling and stuff just on my own before then. And I bounced off of it at first. It took me a couple tries, but eventually things did to start clicking, and that resulted in Blazing Dynamo, my first like real project that got any traction for Unreal.
Considering you've made so many platformers, how do you um, keep your ideas fresh? How do you not have burnout working on the same genre for so long?
It's definitely a little bit tough since what is it? There's a lot of other ideas I want to make that are not platformers right now. I'm like, oh god, I want to make like an action game and like a Zelda game and like a third person shooter and all this other stuff. But platforming is still very interesting to me. A lot of it is just when you do something like this, so repetitively and deeply, you start to get into nitty gritty and weird ideas. Um, which is like, have you seen Death Roll Frenzy, my other jam game?
No, I haven't.
Death Roll Frenzy is a 3D platformer where the gimmick is you have a limited time to complete each level before I guess your head explodes. You're like a bomb character basically. Um, but you can extend it by throwing a big dice you carry around. And the dice is very involved with your platforming as well. If it's a little bit Klonoa, if you've done that, where you can like pick it up and like throw it down for a double jump. They can do lots of other stuff with it too, like kick off of it or dash it and do it in the air to grab it, and all this other junk. Um, it doing a lot of prototypes specifically has let me really get into just some more interesting design spaces that you usually only see out of like mods or something like I don't know, like SRB2 like character stuff. I don't know. A lot of people when they make I guess a genre game, um, they just kind of do the basics of like what's to be expected. Maybe have like one little twist, right? Um, and that's cool and that's fine, but it's usually not terribly interesting on its own. Um, duh, like I don't know, Lunis Dice just came out. It's a very small scale, like 2 hour 3D platformer for $5. Really cool game. Really well put together. Good levels, good art. Also retro like these that I've been doing. Um, but it is also very simple in terms of its mechanics, which is good. It makes it accessible. It's very familiar. Um, but it's not gonna make you go like, "Whoa, I've never seen a game do this before," you know. I don't know. Uh, I just like exploring weird ideas like this.
I imagine game jams are the perfect
Uh,
opportunity to do so.
yeah, yeah. The theme for Death Roll Frenzy, honestly, I wasn't, and I'm still not super jazzed about it, because it was specifically roll of the dice, which I'm like, oh god, there's gonna be so many games where you just play as a dice.
Was that the game make? Not the game maker. It was the
Yeah,
toolkit.
yeah, the
GM's.
Game Maker's Toolkit, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I almost entered that one, but college got in the way.
Understandable. But yeah, but yeah, jams are great. I really like doing jams now. I I have sometimes I see a jam like, oh, I could, but I shouldn't. I said I am very glad I did end up. I was really like berating myself like for half the time working on Stratosphere, like, oh man, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be working on my other game, but I'm glad I did. Um,
Did you learn anything working on Shadowspear that helped you then go into your main game?
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. If nothing else, I've been having a bit of a block trying to tackle enemy AI and stuff. Stratosphere helped with that a lot. The enemy AI isn't like terribly sophisticated or anything, but it helped me break down some barriers I was struggling with in terms of like how to like structure the code and everything. Um, how to set up like the communication hierarchy and like all the state machines and all that junk. It's a lot more clear to me now. Um, there's also uh just the entire like combat data setup, how to again structure like the um the system for like making new attacks and everything in a game like that. I didn't I had like a rough idea of how to do it before, but it was still very based in like tutorial like on YouTube tutorials and stuff. So you know it's not good. It just has like 20 bulls or whatever. But I have something decently solid now. I'm sure it still has a lot of holes in it for a more expanded release, but it certainly worked for Stratosphere.
I recently started tweaking with AI, and it's the goddamn worst. I hate it.
It can definitely be a bit rough. There's definitely a lot of stuff I still don't understand. Um, I'm sure because I'm still working solo on my own games. Um, and I want to do that for this game I have on Steam, Electro and my next game. But the game after that, I'd like to start building up a team, and maybe we'll have an AI guy then, or maybe it won't, and I'll just have to figure it out. I don't know.
What do you do when you hit those roadblocks where you have an idea that you want to make, but you're fuck out of luck when it comes to how to do it, and more importantly, there isn't a YouTube tutorial on how to do it.
um, it's a good question. Well, it's well, first of all, I guess it's not a thing that comes up a lot. Uh, most stuff I've been able to that I want to do, I've been able to wrap my head around in some way. I've accumulated enough knowledge now that if I have a problem, I can get there at least part way by myself. And the other part is either like looking up a YouTube tutorial, but only so I can get like the 20-second clip in like the 20-minute tutorial where they talk about, oh, here's this function that's in the engine. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I needed. Thank you. And then I close the video. Um, uh, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I just try to work through it the best I can at this point. I haven't really gotten to a scenario. I still have fairly simple games at the end of the day. I'm not doing anything like, again, like super crazy AI or like incredible like super overlapping systems or whatever. Um I can just kind of work my way through most logic problems I've had, even if it's a little bit messy. Um like I have an electrokinetic because it's a roguelike, and you have the ability unlocks, right, as you go through a run. And getting that system set up has been a little dicey, but it's mostly good now. Mostly. There's a few scenarios where things get a little messy, but at least during a run, it's all fine.
What's how hard is it to make a roguelike platformer? Because my first thought when I think of something like that is what happens if there's two platforms that are just placed not well together and you just can't bypass that? Is the whole run ended because of like jank like that?
No. They're So basically, the way the structure of the game works, there is no. It's not like a scenario where two platforms have been placed randomly, like next to each other in like a vacuum or anything. The entire game is made up of grid tiles, basically, that are like mini bite-sized platforming chunks. Yeah. And it just kind of stitches those together in random orientations with a little bit of variation within the chunk, that I can doctor. Um, so it's not like a super smart like method of generation, like I don't know, like Noita, I think, or Spelunky or whatever else. It's very rudimentary. I am not a programmer. I am a artist and designer. But I've definitely gotten a lot better at programming, but it's definitely not my strong suit either.
I
Um,
wish I knew what the terms were, but there's like two types of random generation. There's like true random and the one you're talking about, where it's just chunks that load together.
it's basically, well, I think it would be procedural generation and random generation. Procedural is like truly random, like Minecraft, where you are taking, not, there is no predisposed things. There's just kind of like lots of algorithms and like ideas or what have you to try and make things in happen in a specific way. But I just have random generation, which is there's stuff and it is randomly put together, and that's your level.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, these chunks are all completable by themselves. Um, well, I guess more specifically, we're not even talking about Strasbourg anymore. um, I guess to just explain the game, you load into a level, and there's an exit. To open the exit, you have to hit a specific amount of switches that are spawned. Again, I say randomly, but they're placed with specific points on each chunk, and have a chance to spawn at each point. But that's the randomness. So you would hit like 3 of these, and then you would go and leave. And not every chunk would have these. So there would be some chunks that are like, okay, well, if you have enough vertical movement, you can get up to this other area that doesn't have a switch, but has some other kind of bonus that'll help you out on your run. Yeah, but if you don't, you can still just hit the switches and exit. Um, this does mean I have to design everything with basically the lowest common denominator of movement. Um, which can get a little bit. It seems like it could get potentially a little bit boring, and from a perspective, it definitely might. I don't think this game will be necessarily for everyone. Maybe I'm wrong. Um, but if you're the kind of person who can sort of make your own fun or set your own goals and challenge yourself, this is good, because you can just kind of like, okay, I want to get up here from this angle with my current ability set and see if I can pull this off. And yeah, there's still good fun to be had. Um,
What's
but,
your what's your philosophy for level design? Because I imagine that gets tricky as well as I actually really enjoyed jumping around in Stratosphere and having fun with that.
yeah, I'm still relatively green when it comes to level design. Uh, for Electrokinetic, it's a little weird because, yeah, obviously, because it's in these little chunks. Excuse me, I can't really do normal conventional level design. I don't think I'm getting a lot of experience here. Basically, that will carry over into other stuff. Um, I, I I don't really have a great philosophy. I just kind of play it by ear and do what feels right now. I do have a few things. I like to try to keep in mind pacing a lot. Um, there's a few sections in Stratosphere where there's not really anything going on. You're just kind of like specifically the section where you go back outside the cave and you're just kind of jumping around on some rocks and there's no enemies. Um, I've had a couple of people say like, "Oh man, I think you should put some enemies out here," but I don't think so. I think I like having that moment where you just kind of like just take things in, look at the horizon maybe. You just do some light jumping around in between all the battles. I just try to have a good variety. There's a lot you can do with just geometry, honestly. Um, so just like having you in different scenarios and stuff, and trying to not be too repetitive. I didn't think I was that good at level design, and I still don't. But I am sometimes reminded about a little rude, but how bad some people can be. Like how low the floor can get if you just have somebody who just has like no idea what they're doing or intuition for this kind of thing at all. Like just here's like a platform with the same spacing that you have to jump across like 10 times, and that's that's your challenge, you know. Um
Or it's just like a maze of like a dozen platforms that are. Or I'm thinking like I don't want to. Have you seen the release of like Sonic Frontiers?
yeah.
Like I can't get over that. I saw a meme and it was just like the old Windows background with like the rolling
Yeah.
green hills, and it just photoshopped like a guardrail in there. And it's Sonic Frontiers level design.
Yeah, I have so I can't say too much. I don't want to say too much until I've actually played it myself, but looking at it, I feel like I have a lot of problems with Sonic Frontiers in both level design and other aspects like the combat. People saying Sonic Frontiers have good combat. I feel like I need to like snap my fingers in front of them. Like, have you played other video games, man? This is like
I
it's like a cutscene machine.
I've got mixed opinions because like I listen to this podcast and it's got Skill Up, and the Completionist, and the Completionist actually really likes the game, and then Skill Up was like, no, I don't recommend this. This is not the move, Chief.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out for me. All I heard was the completionist likes the game.
Oh yeah. Uh, the Completionist likes the game, but Skill Up is like, no, this is I can't really recommend this. This is a little. And then there's Donkey's review, and he did not fucking like that game.
No, not at all. I'm sure the game is fine, but from what I can see outside looking in again, it seems like most of the fun that you have in Sonic Frontiers is in spite of the game, not because of it. Uh, Nobody really seems to super enjoy most of like the linear spring stuff, but they do like it when you can launch yourself off a rail and just skip all of it entirely.
Yeah.
Or like run into a rock and get a big launch and then do a bunch of tricks and end up somewhere you're not supposed to be and that kind of thing. Um, and uh, the combat, from what I've seen, looks like it can be a little bit fun at first, but it also seems like it gets extremely stale very quickly because there's a lot of these lengthy cutscene like attacks you don't have any control over really. Um, there's again a lot of the same gimmicky enemies, which are like cool ideas, but not what you have to do them. Like a half dozen times. Um, the only idea I do like is the Psyloop thing. That seems like a good idea because, again, I think it leans into what Sonic already does, which is moving, and turns that into a method of attack. But I don't think they quite find enough ways to do interesting things with it. Um, I don't know. I think Sonic Frontiers could be a great jumping off point to improve things.
That
Um,
is pretty much SkillUp's review. He was like, "Great
yeah.
foundation. Can't wait for the sequel."
A lot of things in Sonic Frontiers games, I mean, I don't even like that much still, but I think just the idea of the open world Sonic is something that a lot of fan games have been trying to tackle for a while. Um, and honestly, this feels about on par with a lot of those if you've played them. This is just more of a finished product and has more like presentation and stuff like the cutscenes and everything. It
I
is of course a finished full game.
I haven't played. I love platformers, but like the only thing I really play is just like all of the Mario games. But
That's
that's
fair.
I just find that a lot of platformers, and the reason I brought up Sonic is that like the level design often is just like floating bricks or like floating like set pieces, and I don't feel like I'm actually exploring anything but like random assets that have been tossed together. But I like Stratosphere because like even just with the bizarre geometry, it reminded me of like, have you seen those like the rocks that are all hexagonal and they all form those types of shapes?
Yeah, stuff like bismuth or whatever. I think bismuth is square, but yeah. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
is that like that's what I thought when I was exploring the cave system. I was like, oh, this is really nice, especially with the music choice you went with.
Yeah, Yappy did a great job on the tracks. Not that he made it for the jam, but they still a very talented composer.
What was the reason? Why did you pick jazz for the platformer? Because I was like, bold choice, it works, but why jazz?
I just thought it sounded good and kind of matched the mood to me. I think a lot of people are a little bit too safe in their music choices. Like I did hear a couple like, oh, this song doesn't fit. It really gives me like a mellowed out vibe, but well, no, that's the intent. If you don't like the end result of putting this song and this thing together, like that's fair, but it is absolutely doing what it was supposed to. Um, Music can absolutely like set the mood. So if you pick something weird or distinct, you'll get uh a more unique feeling for the game. Um, I just to me I don't know. I guess just a little bit like people said, like lo-fi chill vibes or what have you. Uh, Part of it is just Yappy had already given me the okay to work to use their music in my project, so I'm like okay. Um, but I also just already really liked not I mean Yappy came to me first and asked if I wanted to work with them in any capacity. But I had just generally liked their music, and I'm not just gonna like put music in solely because that's what like things are supposed to sound like. I also want to like the music myself, right? Um, so I don't know. I think a lot of stuff that isn't convention can still work perfectly fine, but people are just a little bit scared to try something different, I guess.
It's
I don't
weird
know.
how, as designers, we don't really like have a lot of control over music, but it like sets the almost the aesthetic just as much as the visuals when you play a game.
Yeah, music's interesting like that. It's something that on one hand can be literally tacked on, but also has a huge impact in the perception and like you said, the aesthetic and the mood of the game. Um, music can be very strong. Like musical juxtaposition, like where you have I mean, I don't know, like the ending of Evangelion, right? Or just generally like when like if something like awful is happening and you have like a happy or funny song playing, it's very powerful to have that juxtaposition as opposed to just like a horror sting. You get a very specific feeling from that. Um, I don't think we're quite there with this game, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm thinking I recently picked up the Ascent, and it's like a cross between like Cyberpunk 2077 and like a Hive world in Warhammer 40K. And there's a
Hmm.
bit where there's this wave of onslaught of enemies, and like the music stops, has like a dubstep breakdown, and right when that happens, like a giant fucking mech enters the room, and I'm like, this is the most hype I've ever been in my life. It's
Hell
just from the
yeah.
music alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm into it.
Um, what was what was it like designing the enemies for Stratospear? Why make them very cute and make me feel bad when I fight them?
Um, Honestly, for the enemies, I was just like, man, I just need to get something done because it took me like 3 months to settle on a design for the enemies in Electro Kinetic, at least the first one, and I didn't even like them that much. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I obviously don't have a lot of time. Um, and I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna make like the something, and whatever comes to mind, I'm just gonna roll with it. And I ended up with like um, it was kind of the theming for the 32-bit game jam, aside from being 32-bit, was another world and ocean. Um, so that's why VT is an astronaut on an alien planet, and that's why the enemies are like mostly sea creatures ish. Uh, yeah. So you've got the I just call them the angler moles. um, and the jellyfish they're not. I wanted to get something else to staple onto them, but unfortunately they are just red jellyfish. Uh, but yeah, they're just little dudes. They are kind of cute, but it's fine. Everybody hates the jellyfish enough to offset it.
That's fair. They were. I did not realize they were homing attacks, so I ran away from one, turned around, and I just watched this thing just fucking whip back and hit me. I was like, "Oh, you bitch!"
Yeah. It's a very simple enemy, but very effective.
But I liked that you could. The only way to defeat it was to you could just dash out to the side, which made the combat like quicker, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but also you could hit the attack to make it stop.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was it created almost like, I don't want to say a break in the flow, but instead of just being like attack, 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 like just spamming, it
Mhm.
caused me to actually like create a new pattern with how I was fighting, which I
Yeah.
actually really appreciated.
Yeah.
Was that intentional, or did you just want something to like, or like, did you just want to give the player like the ability to defend themselves?
A little bit of both. I just, it's nice to have multiple ways to tackle a problem, right? And I didn't put any like discrete defensive abilities in the game. Right? There's no guard. Yeah. There's no your dodge. Is not even a dodge, just a dash. There's no iframes on it, right? Um, which is also, can I say on that note, love Dark Souls. God, it has had quite an impact on combat design, and we cannot get away from iframe dodge rolls now, being the primary method of defense in games.
Have you like played Dark Souls and then jumped into something like Monster Hunter where you have a roll but no iframes?
Um,
That shit
mm,
is jarring to be like, wait, where's the iframes?
I have a lot of other weird control things about Monster Hunter before I even get to the dodge. I kind of bounced off of that game because it controls so weird. I appreciate that it controls weird, but I mean, it's between that and I'm just not a huge fan of the gameplay loop of like, okay, all right, I had a big epic boss fight against this monster. It was really tough, but we pulled that one through. What's next? Oh, I have to fight the same monster again, and then again, and then again. And then people complain about, we're fighting a bear 6 times in Elden Ring. I mean, I get it. In Monster Hunter, the monsters are designed better for that kind of thing. It's the whole game, so there's like more layers and depth to them than most Dark Souls bosses who might just have like a few attack patterns. Uh, but also they still take a while, and you are still kind of doing the same thing. So I don't know. It's just I didn't really stick to it. I want to give it another shot one of these days. I know Rise is supposed to be a little bit faster paced, so maybe.
Pro
But
tip,
yeah.
as someone who always sucks at the combat and can't get into it, start with a bow because then you don't have to engage with it and you can like appreciate the rest of the game systems, and hopefully that'll like sell you in to make you then want to branch out into the other weapons.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't really think I like the idea of the bow that much, but I
True.
might
Some
give it a try
people in the comments might
just
be
for
like,
you.
"That's a dumb opinion," but I meant like my opinion with the bow, not your opinion. I don't want to roast your opinion.
It's fine. I encourage everybody to roast me, please. Um,
So now we're on to the talk section of the podcast where let's just talk about what games we've been playing and see if maybe any of that stuff has influenced what you've played in the past, or what you've made in the past and what you're making in the future. So, Ritz, what have you been playing?
what have I been playing? Not as much as I would have liked to have been. But, I actually been playing some of the Castlevania games a bit lately. Um, Finally played through Symphony of the Night for the first time. I touched it before, but it's my first full playthrough.
Is that like one of the really old ones?
That is, yes, that is the iconic Castlevania game that started the I guess the Vania side of the Metroidvania.
Mmm.
Where you play as what's his name, Alucard. You got the backdashes and everything. It's a good game, but also it is absolutely far from perfect. The balancing is all over the place. I honestly think the biggest W that game has is it's honestly just like incredibly charming. Um, and the art is and music is aesthetic is all fantastic. Uh,
That I have a huge like ass pile of shame of games I've never touched, but I really want to, and the Castlevania series is like right up there.
yeah, it's fine, man. I haven't beaten like a single 2D Mario.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, oh man, that's like I said, that's the only platformer I think I've really fucked. No, I played a short hike. That is like, I think one of my top games, and it's a
Short
platformer.
hike is very good. It's starting to have. You can see the seeds of a short hike in various other games coming out now. I think.
Really,
Um,
like what? That's I need to know these games.
um, there was one I saw the other day. Somebody posted this in my Discord. Actually, you can check there. Where you're playing as it's a first person game, but you're playing as like a little cartoon frog because frogs are the hotness in indie games right now.
Mmm.
Um, you're playing as a little frog and you're just climbing mountains. Yeah, Valley Peaks it's called. Very short hike vibes. There's a not Lil Gator game.
Oh, that
Um,
looks adorable.
yeah, which is also like extremely. You can do like, oh yeah, these guys played a short hike, definitely. um, it's starting to. Its fingers are reaching out and influence. Um,
I saw a guy on Twitter recently. It's like a Zelda game like esque. At least that's the vibe I'm getting. But all
mhm,
you do is you just play as a little gecko. And you run along walls on
right.
these mountains, and
Yeah.
it's I love it because I love reptiles so goddamn much.
Yeah. There's that's definitely another genre that I think is coming to fruition is like you just play as a normal animal more or less. Um there's a couple of cat games, there's Stray obviously. But there's also like Little Kitty Big City. I think like one other one. There's the gecko game, there's like a squirrel with a gun. Um
That
there
game
was
looks so stupid.
yeah, it's funny. Um, there's like one where you play as like an electrical spirit mouse or something. I think there's like a raccoon one. There's a bunch. Uh, but those are cool. Uh, I also played some of Rondo of Blood in terms of Castlevania, which is like I want to say the last traditional Castlevania that was like linear before they moved on to the Igavania formula. Um, it's also the one that the Netflix next season for Castlevania will be based on,
Oh,
probably.
they're still doing seasons of that?
Yeah, they have a teaser for the next one, and it shows Richter, the protagonist of Rondo.
Fuck, I gotta finish the anime. Me and my girlfriend we haven't watched the last season yet,
Yeah,
so no spoilers. But
it's a solid show. I got my gripes, but it's solid. It's pretty good. Um,
I'm just happy there's finally a good video game adaptation.
yeah, there's been a lot recently actually.
True, recently, yeah, with the Cyberpunk and Arcane.
Yeah, Cyberpunk and Arcane were both excellent. Castlevania was pretty damn good. As far as being a movie goes, the Sonic movie was, yeah, it was fine, and the Mario movie also looks like it'll be fine. Um, I'm sure it'll be a decent time with your kids or whatever. Uh,
As someone who likes character design, how do you feel about Mario's voice?
I mean, what does it say? Chris Pratt sounds like he's phoning it the fuck in.
I'm
I can't be entirely mad at him specifically because whenever there's this kind of thing, you have to at least put a little bit on the director and the editor and all that, right? And apparently, for the Mario movie, people are not being given any sort of context whatsoever for their lines, and they're just told to do a bunch of different takes, and they'll just pick the one they feel best fits the scene
really.
afterwards. Yeah,
Oh,
which is like, yeah, that kind of sucks.
that's really bad. Because I watched. Did you ever get around to watching Invincible?
Yes, I have watched Invincible.
I watched some of like J.K. Simmons in the booth doing the voice recordings, and
Hmm.
he's like actually like fully like moving his hands and like trying to play the role physically because then
Yeah,
it
no,
like it,
it comes through.
yeah, I think it's really cool. And they also do the recording with other people, I think. So
Yeah.
you can see who you're supposed to be talking to.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's the. I mean, that's the best way to do it if you can. It's not always viable, especially having the other people with you. Um,
And COVID kind of shook up
yeah,
every
that
industry ever.
for sure, for sure. But if you can do that sort of thing, it definitely helps. And yeah, physically acting with what, like, I feel like that's the, like, I can't imagine doing it any other way personally. Because like, if you want to get into it, you should be into it. It's still acting, right? Like, even if your movements like don't look right or whatever, just the fact that you're doing them helps a lot. Excuse me.
Yeah, your voice changes ever so slightly, but it makes a difference if you're
Yeah,
like physically punching when you're voice acting the punches.
yeah. No, for sure. It adds that texture. It's very important, I think. Um, there's a
But I
yeah, I
have,
don't know.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not actually fully against Chris Pratt's voice performance, just because I think they're going for like a fish out of water type of story, and I feel like his voice kind of perfectly fits that like awkward bumbling guy feel. Um,
Uh,
but I
I
also
mean, like,
haven't seen
yeah.
the rest of the film, so I'm gonna hold out to see whether I do admit though it could be a little more Mario-y though.
I'm fine with him being awkward at some point. Like, clearly, this Mario doesn't know how to jump, apparently, which is just baffling. Um,
I don't really like that. I don't I think his voice for the story they're going for kind of fits in a way, but I don't like the type of story they're going to tell. I already don't think I'm gonna like this movie.
Yeah, it's weird. We'll see. There's a few that I feel like are kind of like Chris Pratt's not really doing a voice. I don't think, what is it, Anya Taylor-Joy sounds like she's really doing a voice. She's just kind of talking. Um, Charlie Day is at least he doesn't sound like he's doing a voice, but he is acting more than the other two.
Jack Black fucking killed it as Bowser though.
And yeah, Jack Black and is it Peel?
Oh,
The
for a
Peel?
Toad?
Yeah.
I hate Toad's voice no matter who does it, so fuck it. Let's just fucking
I mean,
bring Toad.
I think he's doing a pretty good job, and also he is putting on a voice still. He is not just talking in his normal person voice, which thank God for Toad. That would be awful for Toad if you're just a guy talking.
Toad is just a dude.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't really care that much about the Mario movie though, so uh what else have I played? Um I guess yeah, there were other 3D platformers. I mentioned Luna's Dice. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No, I haven't. What's that one?
Yeah, again, it's just like a $5 like PS1 styled linear 3D platformer. You play as a little Tanuki girl. It's fairly basic, but it's good. It's a solid time. Like I said, it's not gonna like blow you away in terms of like new mechanics, but it's very well put together. The presentation is nice. There is a lot of like floating platform stuff, like you mentioned, not liking a lot, but it is also kind of like a weird dreamscape. Like that's the point.
I could put up
Um,
with that. Like when I say like I don't really like the floating platforms, I mean like every game has floating platforms, but like in Celeste, the floating platforms are like ice chunks because you're on a mountain. So like
mhm,
fuck it. But some games will just be like, this is a metal plate,
yeah,
just here, I guess, because
yeah,
fuck it.
yeah. Gameplay first, obviously, but if you can manage a way to contextualize all your platforming elements to not to feel a little bit less video gamey, that it can definitely help. It does depend on what you're going for, though, for sure. For Electrokinetic, it's all inside of a computer world, so I'm just kind of using that as my ticket to be like, look, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just jump on things.
Well, I liked one of the things I liked about Electro Connect from the trailer I saw was like how bouncy the characters were, especially in the animation. You really like
Mhm.
took advantage of like squash and stretch on that one.
Yeah. So funny thing about that, I actually the rigs for the characters are kind of scuffed, and I can't actually use bone scaling. I can still take advantage of squash and stretch just in the basic sense of the principle, which is to say like you because squash and stretch both refers to literal like squashing and stretching the model, but also just like an actor or like a character or person like curling up before a jump and then stretching out and extending their limbs fully to propel themselves and then like curling back up at the apex and that sort of thing, right? Um, but I do have some programmatic stretching of the model to make up for it. So whenever you jump, yeah, the model just stretches out with code and then contracts, and same with landing. They squash down a little bit.
I think that's
Um,
like a great idea because like a lot of people, I don't know, when I think of movement in video games, I think of like as an like something as an analogous. I think of like flowing like water, and so squash and stress like kind of fits that like almost abstract motif.
yeah. Yeah, animation is super important to game feel and movement. I'm not the best at it. Again, I don't think I'm the best at any aspect or anywhere close, but I care.
I,
um, and
I,
I've got a bit of practice. So
are you familiar with Extra Credits, the YouTube channel?
I haven't watched them in forever, but yeah,
You know the guy with the squeaky voice, Dan? How they like he wanted to
right.
do his own.
Yeah, he has his animation based gameplay game channel now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched. He has like a 2 hour video on the complete history of the animation of the mainline Sonic games,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
forever changed like how I see animation in video games. Like it's like such a great video.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. Makes good stuff. I appreciate putting a lens on animation like that in the way that's consumable for your average viewer, I guess. Uh,
What's it like to make like a good platformer? Because there's all kinds of like almost like hidden mechanics, like coyote time and stuff like that, that makes like a platformer great. Like, what do you employ to make your platformers good?
Um, I'll say that to anybody who's making a platformer, or honestly any type of game, my first thing is when you're making your platformer, just like have your other favorite games of the genre on standby, and just be like, okay, why does this game feel better to play than mine? Just keep going back and forth, like how does this why does this feel better? Why does this work in a way and like feel more responsive than mine does? Um, you'll probably be, if you're doing it right, you'll probably end up like rubbing yourself against walls and jumping on enemy heads and stuff. Even if you don't have like Mario bounce off, yeah, just trying to figure out the specifics. Um, but it can depend on your goals certainly. Mario has a very like I guess a very gradual jump curve, right? Uh, where he ascends kind of very like evenly, and then starts to fall. Stays at the apex, but then falls very slowly. For most of my games, I kind of employ a much snappier jump curve, which is honestly a little bit weird, just because you don't actually get the as much like analog control over your jump height. You still have it; it's just harder to pull off. But I just like how it feels a lot better. um, and honestly, you don't need. I don't think I miss the specific slower control anyway. I think I can usually get the jump height I need about most of the time anyway. But maybe that's just because I'm used to it. Uh, there's a lot of stuff though. Uh,
Yeah, the thing about platformers is like more than any other genre, I think they live or die based on like the controls. Like some
yeah,
games you can maybe I love Fallout, but goddamn the shooting's not the best. Um, but a platformer without good platforming is dead on arrival.
yeah. My electrokinetic is kind of living on a thesis of like it maybe won't be the most like uh memorable experience in terms of like like a very specific doctored like set of challenges and stuff. But if you have a good feeling character controller and just some basic enough geometry to jump around on to prompt you to use your move set, you can get a lot of fun out of that. Maybe that's just me as the dev, but I think so too. I think something like Sonic Frontiers kind of proves that, honestly, because a lot of people like that game, but that game does not like is barely even feels like it's designed around Sonic sometimes. A lot of the geometry in the overworld just feels like it really does kind of feel like it could have just came from any open world game. I mean, they have like uh, there's a thing in the opening when the game boots up. You know how they have all the credits for like programs and studios and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the thing on there is Quixel Mega Scans. And what that is it's a bunch of like photo scans of real world like geometry and like objects like rocks and stuff, trees and junk. Um and they just put that in a Sonic game. And that's baffling to me. It's Sonic. Why does he just have like real rock formations,
Yeah,
right?
like and all the enemies are like these like I don't know. It feels like something out of like a pseudo realistic. Like I don't know how to describe. Everything's like really angular and angry. I guess in the character design for the monsters that I do not think like fits like a really bouncy like character like Sonic. I don't get it. I really do not get the visuals. Hello.
Uh
All right. So with that little bit of what were we talking about before my Wi-Fi so rudely decided to just kill itself?
last thing I remember was just I guess platformer control stuff.
Right. How to make a good
Um
platformer.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I don't know. If you want, like, ask for like a specific thing. If you ask me, like how to make a good platform, like I don't know, make it good. But if there's like a specific part, it's like, oh, how do you make a wall jump feel good? I'm like, oh, okay, well, you want to make sure that you like basically. The thing with that is you want to try to find the player's intent the most, and respect that. So for me, I found that what I like to do is I like to not I like to not actually initiate, like, you know how you have like the wall slide in Mario.
Mm-hmm.
I like to not initiate that until the player has started to fall, basically, and not while they're still rising. Otherwise, it kind of cuts them off. Unless, of course, you have your wall jump is implemented differently, where it inherits your vertical velocity, in which case then it might not be an issue actually. But for the way I've implemented it, it feels better like that. Um, it doesn't, if you're moving towards a wall, uh, what is it? If you jump in front of a wall, it doesn't automatically snap you to it unless you push into it with the stick. But at the same time, if you're moving, what is it? And it also doesn't do it if you're just like been launched or whatever. You were already jumping and you just touch a wall. It doesn't quite initiate it then. But without your stick input. But if you just wall jumped and within a short window you touch a wall, it will just automatically put you into a wall slide state, which makes it very easy to chain wall jumps when that's a thing. Um, to, yeah, I don't know. So that there's that stuff. If you put a dive in your game, please make sure it's like animating to the arc. Um, I've seen a number of people just kind of have like a static flat dive. That feels so bad.
Wait, what do you mean by
um,
like a static flat dive?
Basically like the motion might be in like an arc like Mario, but the character is just kind of like in like a belly flop position the whole time, and they're not like rotating at all with the velocity they're moving at.
Mm.
It feels a lot better if the character is moving in an arc with their dive. Now, whether you want to do that by making it raw in the animation, or which what I do is I just have it rotate the model basically, depending on your current velocity. Uh, that can occasionally run into weird stuff if you are like diving into a wall, um, and then so if you're diving into a wall and then you stop moving basically and you just kind of start pointing down. But there's stuff you can put in to make that less of an issue. Um, I There's a lot of reasons why people don't want to have a ledge grab. It was pointed out. Somebody pointed out to me in a quote retweet, like, "Oh man, a 3D platformer with a ledge grab. You don't see that a lot." And I thought about it in terms of like recent releases, and I'm like, you know, I guess there aren't many. Yeah. A lot of 3D platformers I've played within the past year or two, they don't actually let you touch ledges at all. It's just land on the platform, which is valid.
I think
Because that
only
means
parkour games let you ledge grab. Like I think the last game that let me do that was like Dying Light let me do that.
hmm, I mean Mario does too. Um, but yeah, it's like I don't know, like Jack and Daxter does. Um, I forget if Ratchet does. There's a few of them that do, but just in recent memory, a lot of them haven't. I think even like Sonic Adventure 2, I remember having a ledge climb. Um, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making a game feel good. Overall, I guess it would just be make sure your game is responsive, and responsive mostly means that when you press a button, a thing happens, and it doesn't even necessarily have to mean that like there's you're instantly like doing the thing. Like it's okay if you press jump and your character isn't immediately off the ground, but they should immediately be doing something in response to that input, right? There needs to be some kind of immediate feedback, even if it's not that you're already in the desired state, basically. It's like the principle of like having a wind up or the character like leaning into a turn in like if you're on a bike in a racing game or something, right? Having immediate feedback of some description is very good. Uh,
I don't think anyone particularly likes lag in their controls.
yeah. Um, but I guess it's just a principle of sometimes you have something that might be like maybe it's like a charge move or something like that, right? Or I don't know.
But visually, usually you get like an immediate response. Like if you're
Yeah,
charging, your character
exactly.
usually goes immediately into another stance to let you know.
Yes, exactly. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, because it would suck
Um,
if you like went to charge and your character just T-posed and did nothing. It's like what the
yeah.
fuck.
Um, I've seen it before where you start a charge and the character like stays in their idle stance for like a second before anything actually starts happening. I'm like, oh, okay, it's weird. Um, I mean, if it's just like a background charge, like a Mega Man X sort of thing, that's one thing. But even then, like you immediately start getting like a not immediately because it's a hole, but you very quickly start getting like a visual effect and a sound and everything. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about making like small. I don't really want to become like a YouTube dev. But I've thought about making small videos where I just kind of talk about little game design tidbits. But I'm also like, am I like, is my input valuable enough for that thing? And I'm still not sure. Uh,
I don't
but
see
I
why
guess that
not.
doesn't
I
stop.
mean, you're on a
Yeah,
podcast talking about game design.
yeah. I guess that doesn't stop a lot of other people who are just like it's like a very armchair, right? So whatever.
That is
Um,
that is kind of like why I picked the this podcast format was because I was like, oh, I want to interview people who are actually doing like the work and hear what they have to say, because the
yeah.
relationship you have to art is different when you're making it.
No, for sure. I'm still in a weird spot because I haven't like really like Stratosphere is the most finished thing I've done, and I'm happy I did it, but I'm also like, oh, I gotta fucking get something out already. Not only for that reason, but also so I can make money. Um, I I'm not able to work on my current game nearly enough. As in terms of like amount of like percent of the day. I've barely worked on it this month, honestly. And I'd really like for it to do well enough that I can just work on my next game full time, at least by myself, and not have to think about anything else. Just wake up, dev, to go to sleep until I get burnout. um,
Well, if you started a YouTube, at least maybe you could justify a Patreon.
I mean, I don't think I need a YouTube to justify a Patreon. I've thought about it, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel right yet. But maybe. Um, but starting a YouTube eats into my time of development, so it feels a little counterproductive in that sense.
I have
Kind of the trap,
seen
yeah,
YouTube devs quit to like be like, I want to work on my game full time, so I'm stopping the YouTube stuff.
yeah. It's hard to do both. YouTube is a very if you're like doing all the editing and shit too, which most people are because otherwise you need to hire someone for that, and that costs a lot of money in and of itself. Um, but if you're doing all that yourself, you're trying to dev YouTube and etc., then it could be very hard to keep up with everything unless you're one of those I make a devlog like twice a year kind of guys. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I'll get on here some kind of podcast in like 3 years, and I'll have more insightful things to say than like "make your game good, idiot." Um,
um, Question before we wrap up: why did you choose to make your whole game around a spear?
um, a spear in particular. Well, I knew I wanted a throwing weapon, for one thing, but also one that was conducive to melee attack still and picking it up. It's technically not even spear; it's like a glaive or something. Like a guandao maybe, because you can like slice with it still. It's like one-sided. Um, but yeah, it was between that and just liking the idea of like a rocket spear. I just thought that was neat, like conducive. Yeah, I was like, yeah, this works. It's and also like swords are very typical, and I kind of a part of me tries to avoid them, but I also am like, I know there's a game I want to make with a sword at some point. Because I do still like them. I do still think they're cool. I'm not one of those guys that's like, ah, man, swords are stupid. I want like a morning star in my game. That's the only thing that all games should have morning stars or some shit. But yeah, it's I just thought it would be neat, I guess, and it fit it kind of reminded me of a ship, I guess. I don't know. Um,
You could always be one of those guys who's like, no, 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 I didn't pick a sword. I picked a khopesh. There's a difference.
God. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's technically not a spear, but it's a fucking spear. Come
It's a
on.
spear. Fuck it. We're not a history podcast.
Also for the name,
Stratosphere.
Stratosphere.
Yeah, no, that was I guess that was smart. Stratosphere.
Yeah, my friend actually pitched atmosphere to me first, but I felt like that didn't quite roll off the tongue correctly for me.
Too many
Atmosphere.
syllables, I guess.
Yeah, Stratosphere just goes smoother. Even though it's a little bit less accurate, I don't know. I think it still sounds good. Uh, the couple more points I wanted to touch on for Stratosphere in terms of like just little things that I like personally. If that's okay.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Um, I was really happy with the healing system. Even if one of the hardest sticking points in these jams and other stuff is like, man, God, teaching players these weird, obscure level systems sure is hard. Um, I think for the next game I do, and including Electro Kinect, I'm going to try a lot harder to make sure that players understand the systems they need to have fun with the game properly before moving on.
Wait, you can
So many
heal?
people, yeah,
I did not know that.
exactly. I have since a couple like earlier this week, I actually put in the Stratosphere page description a distinct instructions on how to heal under the controls because I'm like nobody knows how to do this, and this probably is too late now. Um, did you ever So first of all, do you know how to get a spear stuck in an enemy?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, um, so in my demo video, at some point, I throw a spear and it gets lodged inside an enemy. You do that by holding the lock on button, pressing forward, as in like towards whatever direction the enemy is, and
Oh,
then
okay.
throw.
I do know you could do that. I remember that tooltip popping up.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, that's you can embed a spear or your spear in the enemy like that. If you do a strong hit, basically, you will then dislodge the spear and it'll go flying out of them, and it'll also spew out a bunch of health orbs from the enemy. And like nobody figured out how to do that.
Damn. See, I
um,
I feel bad. I was doing it on keyboard because my wrist is so fucked. I'm wearing a cast right now that I can't
mhm,
use a controller, and I was like, that looks just really weird on the keyboard, and I
that's
couldn't
fair.
execute it properly because I was basically doing it one handed.
Yeah. Uh, Honestly, that's part of the reason I prefer controller to mouse and keyboard because my wrist does not like using a mouse for gaming extended periods of time.
No, controller
Um,
is superior. I'm finally like as of like 2 days ago, my wrist was feeling good enough, and also I can't afford to go back to the doctor, so fuck it.
yeah, I love America's healthcare. Let's
Woo!
just say none.
But yeah, so I'm gonna blame myself on that one because you have the tooltip there.
Yeah, it's fine. Nobody fucking reads tooltips. It doesn't matter. They will read the first couple, maybe, but after that, they're like, "Yeah, I get it," and then they stop reading them,
And
even if they get stuck.
it's better than
Um,
my game. I didn't actually have it in the game. I put all the tooltips on the itch.io landing page, and no
mm,
one read it. All
yeah,
the feedback I got was like, "Oh, you could do this." I'm like, it's there. I just fuck."
yeah. The thing I've been learning most about my games and putting them out is absolutely just like I need to how and I need like that I need to teach players more and how to teach players more. I still haven't done it like quite effectively enough yet, but I'm hoping for Electrokinetic it will be. See, the tough thing about Electrokinetic though is that you don't actually have a lot of abilities in your base moveset. Um, Most of it because it's again roguelike. Most of the stuff is things you unlock. So if you want like a double jump or a weird dash or like a wall run, that's all stuff you have to unlock throughout a run. Um, Generally you can kind of get like a permanent unlock for a couple of them, but that's the other thing. But yeah, so it's very hard to tutorialize. But there are still a few mechanics like the way the gun works is kind of weird. Or the slide jump, which isn't universal, but it is on your starting character. Um, but yeah, basically, what I was getting at with the healing is that if you know about it, I think it's a good game loop because it encourages you to both utilize the spear and the melee move set together, and like cycling between them in a way that's not just like the style rank. Um, but yeah, a number of people have been like, "Oh, I don't get why would you fight enemies?" I'm like, I don't get it. So I just ended up running past them. Like, I mean, it's like a 10-minute game. I'm just kind of hoping that you wanted to play the game, you know. If you're here, uh, also, are we still?
Like recording?
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure if you were still here or
No, we're still good. No, this.
not. But yeah, in a full game, I would probably lock you in the room's classic style. But for this, I thought I'd just opt to not. Kind of means that if you do fight the enemies, it's on you. If you killed every little critter that came at you. But also, it makes the fact that I didn't have time to implement checkpoints work out better. Hey.
That's fair.
Um. Uh. Yeah, I like the combat flow of those. I like that the health orbs aren't just something you just get. I like that they're kind of something you have to like platform around a little bit and jump around to get them after the fact. I think it might be more annoying in a full game, but for this little thing, I think it works out fine. Um, I was really happy. Did you get the actual ending for the game?
I'm gonna be honest. I couldn't figure out how to get the ship to work, so I had to Google the ending because I was pressing every button, not realizing I had to stab the ship to get it to launch.
Yeah, I wanted to be coy about it and not like not just tell the player to attack the ship, but maybe I could have been a little bit less, or I definitely could have been a little bit less obtuse and tried to drop a more relevant hint, at least on the text prompt. But I am still really happy with that interaction because I was like, man, how am I gonna get the ship out? Do I just like press a button and it like cuts to like the ship being, like you just flying away or something, right? Um, I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, what if you speed up the ship? Yeah.
So now it's
I,
a spear glaive repair tool.
Yeah, well, it's not a repair tool. You just gotta dislodge it to get your ship out of the ground. I laughed very hard when I first had the system, the little setup there working. I'm like, this is great.
I mean,
I don't think anybody else likes that as much as me, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I liked the YouTube video when I saw that's how it worked. I was like, oh, that's how. Fuck me.
Yeah. I definitely need to do a lot more to my games to make the obscure mechanics and stuff less obscure. And I'm glad I'm kind of like ironing some of this out now in like my tiny game jam games before someone pays like, $20 for a release. Like, I don't understand how this the mechanic where I got stuck on level 2 for 6 hours. I'm like, shit. I did do a better job teaching then.
It'll never be good enough, though. It'll never. There's always gonna be that one guy that's
No,
like, I'll skip
there's
the
always,
tutorial
yeah,
and I don't
there's
know what's happening.
yeah. It's a bit of a balance. Like people like to be like, oh, it's a make your game like effortlessly intuitive, uh, right? Like fucking the Mega Man X thing, right? Oh, it's so smart. It is, but that doesn't always work. Is the thing. Sometimes you have too many buttons, and there is no way for the player to intuit what to do next or how to use a mechanic unless you tell them what it is. There's just no other option. Um,
Or you have my girlfriend who, if she doesn't know what's happening the moment she picks up the game, she's like, this is too hard, and just puts it down.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. You need to show your player why your game, what's different about your game, and why it's fun as soon as possible. Basically, um, you need them to understand and level with you, so you can start like getting them invested properly, and not just like just be stuck teaching them forever, have them stuck in a basic section, or like just like barraging them with like lore dumps and cutscenes or whatever. Like you need to show them what's up with your game. You need to get that hook. Uh, yeah. Um, da-da-da.
Well, Ritz, I think it's been great talking to you. Where can everyone find your info to be able to reach out and see your games?
You can find me on Twitter and Tumblr, just at Rittzler. I'm also on basically any major social media site that has the user named Rittzler is probably me, but those are the main ones. Um, Again, you can find me on Itch as well for Electro or Stratosphere and other demos. I would definitely recommend checking out Blazing Dynamo and Death Roll Frenzy are playable. And Electrokinetic is coming to Steam. Uh, I'm gonna say sometime early next year, but we'll see how things go. I still, again, development's been a little bit slow, and it should pick back up soon. But, eh. um, yeah. Can I also is it okay if I shout out a couple of my other dev friends and stuff they're working on real quick?
Hey man, one guy I brought on shouted out a pizza place. You can shout out anything at this point.
That's fair. If you like character action games, kind of like Stratosphere, I've got some friends over at Hello Penguin team working on Vernal Edge, which is a 2D character action Metroidvania. It's very good, very cool. It's coming out soon next year. You can find it on Steam. I've got some other friends working on a game that's somewhere in between the realm of Mischief Makers, Klonoa, and Tomba. Game called Double Shake. These are all these games are Kickstarter games, funnily enough, also. But it's coming along very, very good. It's a cool game, good art. And I don't know. I guess you've only recently been on Twitter, but the most recently there was a game called The Big Catch. Um, and if you like 3D platformers or retro aesthetics at all, you owe it to yourself to look at and honestly buy this game when it comes out. It looks fucking immaculate. Um, the devs on that team, they worked on Yonoid 2, the funny game jam Yonoid 3D platformer. Um,
Like the Noid from the Dominoes?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my god.
If you haven't played Yonoid 2, you should check that out too. Then it's free. It's actually a very good little 3D platforming experience. But they really have a great eye for what's good about these types of games. And a great their their animations are fantastic. Their world design is great, and they have a very high standard for level design. Um, it's probably it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a pretty big deal when it comes out. But we'll see. I guess time will tell. But yeah, shout outs to all those guys. They're all making very wonderful products.
Links to everything will be down in the description below that you've heard, and make sure to comment, like, subscribe, the whole fucking rigmarole. See you on the next episode, where hopefully I won't be having COVID. Goodbye, all.